Mic check one. Hello? Was anyone there?
Started, I guess the first show I promoted was when I was 16. I was in a band, and we didn't have clubs up in Connecticut, anyways. Not ones that I can get booked at. We had like two, and I wasn't getting booked at either one of them. So if you were a 16-year-old kid and you wanted to play a show, what you did was rent the Hungarian Hall, or as we referred to it as the Hungy Hall, in Wallingford, Connecticut. And you put a PA in there, and you asked your friends' bands to play with you, and you all sold tickets. And remember my first show? We rented the Hungy Hall. It was $500. That was a lot of money when I was 16 years old in 1994. And then I had to pay the guys, I think it was $300 or $500 to basically bring a huge PA in and set it all up for everybody, because it just had it was like a big hall with a stage, And there's 5 bands on the bill, and we all sold tickets for $5, and I think 100 to 200 people came, And I remember us not losing money. And I think what I did was I can't remember if I had to give them all the money up front, but I definitely had to give them a deposit up front, a security deposit. And I remember borrowing the money from my dad to do this, and I had a car. The car wasn't worth a lot, and I had to basically tell him that if I lost all this money, that I was going to sell my car and pay. That's how I would pay him back. I don't know if he actually would have made me do that or not, because it didn't come to that. But my dad gave me the money. I'd borrowed it from him, and basically we broke even. So I didn't lose any money, but I also didn't make any money. But I also remember making posters and hanging them up all over my high school, and just begging my friends to come. And one of the other bands I got in town was a band called Riddlin, and they were the big draw. They had people there, and there was another band called Dogfish, and they were another kid in town who I was friends with, and he did very well too, I remember. And subsequently, me and him did a lot more shows after that. His name was Jimmy McGowan, I remember. He was just covered in tattoos type of dude, And we went in the middle, I believe. I don't think we went. I think Riddlin had the headline, And then we went in the middle. But I also remember there was a band. I can't remember their name, but it was classic. They just brought their girlfriends. They didn't sell any tickets. And at the end of the night, nobody made any money, but nobody lost any money. Nice. And that was really big. That was really big. And then I think I did it again a couple years, maybe it was a year later. I rented the Polish Hall, which I tried a different hall, thinking that was going to be the deal. So that somehow was going to be different. But we did the Polish Hall, and basically the same thing happened. We broke even, except this time I bought kegs of beer, and we sold keg cups. Which I'm not, if I remember correctly, of course it was probably totally illegal, but I had a friend who was over 21 and he bought the beer, and then we sold keg cups, but I think I ended up getting drunk and giving more keg cups out than selling keg cups. I think I was 17 or 18 at this time, And similar bill, there wasn't a lot to choose from in Wallingford in terms of bands. So yeah, some of the same kids. I think the Dogfish guys were also on the bill. We went with them again. Had a couple other bands this time. Rented the same PA guy out who eventually became our agent. He was a local promoter, and he was a little more for real. And he can get you into the bigger clubs. He could also get you into clubs in New York City. So us being, I think we were 17, we were basically didn't even understand you were supposed to be getting paid for these gigs. But wherever my band played, we would have a group of people come. We were pretty good at getting folks out. So maybe there was 50 or 100 people. And I think what was happening is, now that I now understand this, is that the promoter, his name was Carl, and he was pocketing all the money, not paying us, but he was getting us gigs, and my band had gigs, so we were super happy about that. And I think remember when I think I was 17 or 18, he would take me to New York City on a bus. They would rent a bus out, his band. They were called the Uninvited, if I remember. And they would put a keg on the bus, and like 30, 40 people would get on the bus, and we would drive to New York City and go to CBGB's. He would play at CB's or the Continental or Brownies or wherever they were playing, man, all the cool New York City clubs. And we would bring a busload of people. I think the club owner really liked that. And I was not of age. By the time I got there, I mean, I was just completely wasted. And he would come up to me and be like, take this guitar and just follow me into the club and put your head down and don't say anything. You know what I mean? And I would just get right into the club, and then I would hang out in CBGB's while his band played, and they would pack the place, and I'm sure they would get paid to do it. But I was allowed to hang out on the bus trips and basically get a keg cup and just get hammered and show back up home at 4 in the morning on a Friday or Saturday. But somehow my parents were cool with that, I guess. But you know, looking back on it, it was a lot of fun. You can't really have that much fun anymore.
That was it.
It was it. Like it was so fun. It should have been illegal. It probably was. All the stuff we were doing, I think we were definitely, you know, using drugs on the bus, and it was fun, man. It was a lot of fun. But we used to do those bus trips, and Carl used to get us gigs, and then we would play some of the clubs and stuff. But I guess back then I didn't really understand the whole concept of a promoter, you know, and what that was, or an agent or the business. I was the guy in the band who was responsible for getting us gigs, you know. So that was my job, and that subsequently was my job, I guess, in every single band I've ever was in after that too. So how I actually started being a promoter in Atlanta, I was in a band when I came down here, and my friend Cale Davis was a promoter. And he moved his series he had at Mr. C's that my band had played over to Smith's Old Bar, and he got the Monday nights in the small room, which was a big step up from Mr. C's, you know. So he said, Sean, do you want to run the door for me on Monday nights? And I'll pay you if we make money. This is how the arrangement was. I will pay you if we make money. I will pay you $30. And if we don't, you just kind of have to let me off the hook. And we tried. And I said, oh, okay, that's cool. Because I was playing 6 nights a week at that point. The only night during the week I didn't have a gig was Monday nights. And then I picked up this door gig. And when I say gig, I mean musician. I was a musician around town, and I was playing in bars and clubs, and I was running sound and doing whatever. So I did that for about a year, and then during that year, Cale was running the sound, and I was doing the door, and he was booking it. It was called the Songsmith Songwriter Series at Smith's Old Bar. And Cale knew I was a sound guy too, so he every once in a while would say, hey man, you want to run sound tonight? You can make a little more money. Okay, and then he would have Warren or somebody run the door. And then every once in a while, Cale would say, hey, I got a Monday a month from now. Do you want to book the night? And I would say, yeah, sure, that's awesome. So I would call up my friends who were in bands, and I would get them on the bill. And another thing I would do is when you were working the door, you would meet all these musicians, and you were in a very unique vantage point to see who exactly was bringing all the people in. Because the way Cale did it, I believe, is we were taking tally marks, and I was keeping track of who was bringing who at the door, and that's how the payout all worked. So I kind of had an acute knowledge. I didn't realize it was very Mr. Miyagi at the time, like wax on, wax off. Like I was learning what they call a ticket history. You know what I mean? Of the band. So I was like learning who was kind of worth the tickets and who wasn't. You know what I mean? And I didn't realize how powerful that information was at the time. When he asked me to book, I would just call my friends' bands. I would put some nights together. Some nights would do well, other nights wouldn't. As we kind of went down the road, Kale was spending less time there, and I was doing more sound, and then I think Warren was running the door on the nights I was doing sound. Then there were a couple nights where I was doing sound and the door. And then Kale was calling me more frequently to book the place. Can you book this one? Oh no, what happened was, I remember now, we were doing well, so we got Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. So Kale would call me to, hey, you want to book this Monday, you want to book that Tuesday, you want to book this, you know what I mean? So I was booking more and doing more. And then what happened was, about 2 years into it, this is about 2000, I think, 7 at this point. In 2005, I started working the door. It was March 2005. So in about 2007 in the summer, things were going swimmingly. I think Kale had totally relinquished one of the nights to me. Maybe it was Monday, maybe it was Tuesday. I can't remember, you know? So I was running the show. I was booking it, running the sound, and doing the door, and you know, trying to make money that way. And so Dan Nolan, the owner of Smith's, and Cale Davis got into a fight over money. And Cale calls me, and he goes, hey man, he goes, I just told Dan Nolan to go fuck himself, so I'm not going to go back to Smith's. So if you want to just take this thing over, why don't you just go ahead? You can have Tuesday nights. And I said, really? And he's like, yeah, I'm not going to go work for Dan anymore. He's you know, they got into a fight over money. I can't remember exactly what happened. But I said, okay. And then 10 minutes later, Dan called me. And, oh no, I think Cale called Dan back, and he said, well, I'm not going to do it anymore. And he goes, what do I do? And he goes, well, why don't you call Sean McPherson? Because he's the guy who's been booking all this crap anyways for the last year or so. I haven't really been doing much of anything. And Dan apparently had no clue. So he calls me, and he goes, I need you in my office in 15 minutes. I said, okay. He goes, well, I think the first thing he said to me, he goes, who the fuck are you? I was like, what do you mean? I've been basically working at your club for 2 years. And I've been working downstairs. He goes, well, Cale tells me you've been booking all this stuff, and I thought he was booking all this stuff. I go, well, I book it, and then I send it to Cale, and then apparently he just sends it to you. And I said, at one point he was booking it, but then, you know, somewhere along the line, I just kind of took it over. You know, and you know, he still does some of the other nights, I think. I just do the Tuesday nights or whatever, and he was like, well, I need you in my office right now. So I get in my car and I drive down to Smith's, and he brings me in, and him and Mike are sitting there, and Mike's sitting in what now is my desk, and Dan's sitting at his desk, and they just kind of lean back and they look at me. And I think they thought I was going to try to shake them down for more money, because I think the arrangement was they didn't pay us anything. We were allowed to make money at the room. They kept the bar, we kept the door, which is a pretty standard arrangement in most, you know, promoters at a club like Smith's, at a ticketed venue. So I think he thought I was going to shake him down for more money or something, because he just looked at me. He goes, so what do you want to keep doing this? I was like, what do you mean, what do I want? I was like, I'm just making money off the door. I'm paying myself to do sound, and I take 10% from the bands if there's any money, and if there's no money, I don't get paid, you know? And he goes, well, then that's fine with me. Let's just keep things the way they are. And I said, oh, that's fine with me, you know? And we shook hands, and he goes, now just email me directly with the nights, and I'll just call you directly. And he did. So that went on from 2007 to basically 2013. And I think at first it was just Tuesday nights, and it was like Tuesday and Wednesday. And then at one point in 2008 or 9, I think I'd taken over every night in the Atlanta room, except for a couple of nights that Dan had a national act coming through. And that basically, I was an outside promoter there, and I basically did that until 2013, until he made me the assistant talent buyer. Me being the assistant talent buyer, Dan was having me just book all of the support, and then I was even getting involved in some of the deals. I remember one of the deals we did with Driving and Crying was really big, and I put that together as the assistant talent buyer. And then, when it was time to make a change and Dan would step down, there was another person who was doing the job. And she didn't last very long. I think she lasted like 2 months. And she had been in the office with us for a long time, but as the assistant, more on the administrative side. And her and Dan had a disagreement, and she did not last. And Dan promoted me. And then for the next 5 years, I was the guy. That job was a lot different. So as the assistant talent buyer, you're mainly dealing with local talent. You're mainly doing door splits. You're doing small guarantees or flat fees for bands as support. And that's kind of the norm. I mean, if you go to the Masquerade, they have a junior guy, and they have the more senior talent buyers who are booking the shows together, and the junior local people are kind of booking the local acts, and it's like a different skill set. So it's good to learn that side first, and learn the local talent, and learn the numbers before you start going into the bigger league, so to speak, where you're dealing with the agents. Because when you start dealing with the agents, it's a whole different ball game. It's much more difficult of a job. And I basically got a dose of that into 2015, and probably my first year was tough, I remember, because the club was not doing great, and I didn't have much in the way of support up there, except for Brittany. Brittany came in then, and she was awesome. But she was learning how to do the job too, honestly. So, and I remember that first year I had a bunch of interns who were awesome. Danny and Brian, they were great. But I was still very much learning, and I started to really kind of, I think by the end of 2015, I was going to conferences, AIBA and Polestar, and I was really diving in and like meeting the agents and listening to podcasts and just like talking to other talent buyers and really like understanding the game. And I guess I kind of really, talking to Dan a lot more, I guess I really learned a lot more those last few years in that period of time, just by talking to Dan a lot and dealing with other talent buyers and other agents, and kind of learn the game, so to speak, Definitely. I think like the beginning in like spring of 2016, I remember when I was just starting to kind of date my wife. You know what I mean? Pretty seriously. But also like things were clicking at work, and I had a lot of great shows lining up, and I was making the right kind of deals, and I understood it a lot more. I was definitely losing less money. I was getting better shows. I was making more money for the club. I think, younger bands tend to focus on quantity of gigs over quality of gigs, And as you get a little more in the know, that you realize that it's not about playing, 200 gigs this year. It's about playing, the good ones and making more money doing it. I've even talked to bigger bands, guys. I have a friend in a really big band now they're all over the radio. And I think in 2014 or 15, I was hanging out with him in the studio, and I said, he's like, "Oh yeah, that year we played like more festival gigs than any other band in the country." And he goes, and you would think, oh, that's amazing. You played like more festivals like Music Midtown and Shaky Knees than any other band in the country. And he goes, "Yeah, we were just taking whatever offer came to us. We didn't know what the fuck we were doing. We were just taking everything." And I was like, you're like, wait, what'd you say? And he's like, "Yeah, you gotta turn some things down." To get the headlining slots and like kind of play your cards a little closer to your chest. Oh, because I mean, like if I got to the level where like, Coachella's calling me, I would just be like, yes, before like they even sent the offer over. You know what I mean? And I think most bands would think the same thing too, But That's not how the game is played. It's just not. Not if you want a headlining spot, not if you want to make good money, and not if you want to plan your career right, because it's all about the money, but because there's a thing called opportunity cost. Every time you say yes to one thing, you are saying no to another thing. So, make sure you're not saying yes to something, or you're not saying no to something that's amazing. It's basically what I'm trying to tell you. And you may not even know that you're saying no to that, but I know there's a couple clubs in town that if the buyer goes on, and if he sees any gigs on your website in Atlanta, he doesn't email you to ask you if you want to open up for the big act that's coming through. So he wants to see a clear Atlanta calendar before he emails you. Some promoters don't care as much. He's a really well-known talent buyer in town. He's really good at his job. He's been doing it longer than I have. So I know he knows what he's doing. So I know, but he's not going to call you and argue with you. He's just going to look on your website and he's like, well, I was going to ask you to open up for the sub dudes or whatever, but I saw that you're at the 529 2 weeks earlier, so I didn't even reach out. So don't think that all the promoters don't know what's going on. Don't think that we don't recognize what you're doing. We see what's going on, and we're judging what you're doing. We can look at you and say, well, this is the level they're at, and this is their level of understanding of the business. You know what I mean? So this is the offer they're going to receive, and this is the call they're going to get. It's kind of like it's more where you're at, how I'm going to react to you. That's kind of what the job is, because ticket sales translate to people in the room translates to high bar sales, and that's kind of what we're doing. It's how the whole model works. But for a local band, the more tickets you can, for any band, the more tickets you can move, the more leverage you have with the promoter, and sometimes it's just easier, especially at first, for a local band who is just kind of with their fan base consists of friends and family, is to get that hard ticket in their hand and make that sale face to face, or to use their social leverage to kind of make those sales. I mean, the promoter doesn't want you to sell tickets and to have nobody show up, you know what I mean, because that doesn't help the bar at all. That's actually, I wouldn't say it's worse, but it's not good, you know what I mean. But sometimes if you can kind of use your social pressure to kind of get a bunch of your friends to buy some tickets and show up. If you're a little more aggressive, you have the ticket in your hand. It's a little easier for them to commit to a Facebook event and then just not show up. You know what I mean? It's a little harder for them to fork over the cold hard cash and then not show up. It's just a little more leverage. It's just another tool on how you got to ultimately get people in the room. To me, it doesn't matter how you do it. When my band plays, I just send texts out. You know what I mean? And I can get people to do it. It's just a numbers game. But at the end of the day, the promoters all know what the bands are worth, and they talk about it in town. They say, well, these guys are worth 50 tickets, or they're worth 100 tickets, or they're worth 200 tickets, or they're worth 10. You know what I mean? If you consistently have a ticket history in town and you consistently can do 100 tickets, I mean, at $10 a piece, there's $1,000 in the show gross there, right? So if I know if it costs me $500 on the show, I can offer the band $500, It's about the way it works, So, I mean, I'm offering that as a guarantee to you, so I'm taking a risk. Obviously, if I didn't feel confident that you were going to do it, I wouldn't offer that. With a touring band, it's a little different, just because they're not going to pop up in town next week because they're not from town. They're going to come through the once a year, maybe twice a year, depending on wherever stage of their career it's at. You know what I mean? And if they have a professional agent or manager that they know that that oversaturating the market is not good for the band's ability to draw or their leverage or anything. You know what I mean? So. But for local bands, I think the promoters are a little more hesitant because they don't have the guidance of the professionals in place, and local bands tend to overplay their home market because of how hard it is to tour and how eager they are to play shows, all of the above. You know what I mean? So, I feel like there's definitely certain bands around town. It's not that they're not worth the tickets, but I also know they're just going to they're going to go play at a Star Bar 2 weeks later, and now we have two competing shows in the market, and if you're worth 100 tickets, maybe 50 are going to come to Smith's, and 50 are going to go to the Star Bar, which is kind of a lose-lose, because it goes back to what I was saying before. It's better to play one really good gig than to play two mediocre gigs or three shitty gigs. You know what I mean? So, you're only cannibalizing your own fan base. It's just simple economics of anything, really. Like, it's scarcity. If there's less pineapples, then pineapples become more valuable. But if there's a billion pineapples, they're not worth much. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So that's just an economic principle of scarcity. It's not particularly, exclusive to the music business.
Yeah.
If you're selling homes, and there's just a shitload of homes on the market, you know what I mean? Like, all in that area, and they're all dirt cheap. I mean, you're not going to get a lot for your home. So, like, it's just the way it works, the way the capitalism works, So, like, you just have to know that you create value when you just stay out of the market. So if you're only going to do one show a year, and you're going to get your 100 to 200 people there, and every promoter knows you're only going to do the one show, they're all going to bid on the show because they want to be the guy to do the one show. But they know if you're just going to do one a month, like, what do they give a shit? You didn't create any value there for the promoter to bid on it. They're just going to say, well, here's the door deal because I know you're going to screw me, so I'm not going to give you an upfront offer. I'm going to do it a back-end deal where it puts the leverage on you to promote the show. It puts the onus on you to perform as the band, as the local band. See, the idea of the upfront offer is that, the promoter's taking the risk, so he will promote the show. And that is how you get the leverage, the promoter to really kind of do their job. And if you have a lot of shows, you're going to promote the ones that you have a lot of money out on, and you're going to use your resources and allocate your funds and resources towards that because you stand to lose more. It's just the way the business works. Good agents and managers know that, So they create value by coming into the marketplace. They create scarcity. They only do one show a year, one show every 2 years. You know what I mean? They do things like they'll play the secondary market or the tertiary market just to stay out of the major market. So for example, like a Paradigm knows that, if the revivalists are coming through Atlanta, they're going to come through in, the summer or the fall of 2016. And by 17, they're going to go to Athens next time. And at 18, they're going to go to Augusta. And they're not going to come back till 19, creating a bidding war with all the promoters coming into town. You know what I mean? And what they're doing is collecting offers from all the promoters, and they're leveraging one against the other. So, they're going to say, Live Nation offered this much money. AEG, I know you want the show. What are you offering? You know what I mean? And they kind of just go round and round to drive the money up for the band, and that's how they look good. And of course, they're driving up their own commission as well because they're taking a percentage of that. But it's not the only thing that the managers and the bands and the agents are looking at. I mean, people want to play Shaky Knees. People want to play the cool festivals and stuff. Why they come with a big price tag. They also, they're good looks for the band too. So it's a management decision too. But, money's not the only thing. I mean, I know a lot of people won't play, a room like, I won't call any names out, but some of the more bigger corporate listening rooms around town are not known to be the places where careers are made. They're more known to be the places where rock stars are going to die, and that even though they're known to pay a lot better than, let's say, some of the younger rock clubs, they'll still want to go to the younger rock club because the perception is more the band is on the upswing than the downswing, and that's a big thing to managers and bands alike, But yeah, man, it's just economic principles of creating value applied to concerts just as much as they apply to products. If you look at your concerts as a product, I know bands and musicians don't like to do that, but your managers and your record labels do. So I guess that's why they exist. So working the door is a great way because you get to know the sneezers, you get to know the mayors, you get to know all the people in the scene that kind of are the movers and the shakers. You get to meet people with the bands. Please get contacts. Don't sit there and get hammered and forget everything from the night before. Watch who's coming through the door, what's their age, how much money the tickets are, how much money they're spending at the bar. I mean, all of these things matter. Like every metric you could possibly imagine to record in your mind, you should do it. Like, what kind of clothes do they wear? What kind of car do they drive? Because when I'm doing targeted advertising, I'm putting all that shit in there. You know what I mean? So it's like, dude wears floppy hat, fry boots, Levi jeans. You know what I mean? He's about 35 years old. He drives a Ford truck. You create a customer avatar, and then when you go into Facebook, you can literally type in these things in. You know what I mean? And you create profiles, and then you create ad funnels, and once you gather ticket history, it's a very powerful thing. You know what I mean? So, and get contacts. Like, just build your Rolodex. I mean, once you go those two things, you can be a promoter, because it's at that point when you're commanding people to come out to a club or any place, you can sell them things, and club owners like to sell liquor and food. You know what I mean? So you can kind of go from one club to another and put on shows and get and have leverage with the bar owners or the club owners. Yeah. Because you're learning the ticket history. You're like, oh, this band draws well, and also at the end of the night, make a point to meet the bands and talk to the bands. In every band, there's me and Brittany have the terms the mayor. There's the mayor in each band, and it's the guy who is kind of handles all the business, and he's the guy who's the gregarious one who's talking to the fans afterwards. He's getting the people to come out to the show. He's the mayor of that band and the whole scene that's going on. So you can approach those people and get their phone number and their contacts, because when it's time to book bands, you just need to call the mayor. Whether it's a manager or the drummer, a lot of cases at the local bands, it's just one of the members, But you'll get to know at the door, because like everybody's got to come through you at some point. So you're learning their names, you're seeing their IDs, you're being paid to stand there and basically conduct market research, because you're going to look at their, it's good if you want to be a promoter, you got to know what their crowd's like too, because when you go to advertise these people, you got to be able to create a customer avatar and target your ads towards them, or know where to spend your money on advertising. So like, I mean, if you're just wrong about who's coming to the show, you're not going to have a great time promoting it, and you just have to know. I'm trying to think of a specific show. I mean, there's been so many where I've sat at the top of the stairs and looked at a sold-out show and been like, yeah, this is why I did it. But I guess the one where I met my wife would be probably the one that sticks out in my mind. Not that selling out a tribute band is any less important than selling out a band that's not a tribute band. But what I kind of realized at that moment was like, it doesn't really matter what the band is. It matters that people are in your club having a good time, because that's the whole point. That is the whole point. Like, everybody's there to have a good time, and if the vibes are good and everybody's like just digging the band and singing the lyrics along to that song or those songs, you know what I mean? Like, that moment's created, and it's probably going to be part of somebody's life forever. But the one where I met my wife at the top of the stairs was probably my most important one, I guess. Because now there's two little dudes running around. It's a result of that, I guess. So, like, that's super important, right? Yeah. I mean, let's hope COVID-19 doesn't put an end to concerts altogether, because it's going to be kind of a shitty world where the next generations don't know about like mass gatherings and stuff, and I mean, this thing could have very long lasting sociological, psychological effects on the American populace. That's what I'm concerned with.